Hello and welcome to the 2021 Lake County Film Festival. This is the Q&A for 18 and a half, the feature narrative. And we have with us today Daniel Moya to talk about it. How's it going, Daniel?
All right, Nat. Thanks so much for having us and having the film at the festival.
It is absolutely my pleasure. It is such a fun movie, comedy of errors. Is that a good description?
It's one of the best I've heard, honestly. We struggled. We were like, because it really at its, I think of it as a dark comedy primarily. Has some thriller elements, some espionage, some genre stuff, but comedy of errors, I think, sums it up nicely.
Yeah, and I really love the. Hang on a second. Okay, I really loved. Like it really kind of starts out normal. It takes a little while for me to it took a little while for me to go, wow, this is just a farce. This is just what I don't know if you read a lot, but it almost reminded me of a Donald Westlake story. I don't know if you're familiar with him at all.
I'm not, but I'll take it as a compliment.
He wrote yeah. He wrote a lot of crime fiction. He wrote the book that they turned into Point Blank and Payback.
Oh, yeah.
But then he also had a bunch of books that he wrote that were kind of comedic. Well, they're comedic crime, but not that they're committing a crime. They're almost doing the opposite of that. But just farces, which they've turned into a bunch of horrible movies over the years. But the books are great. Anyway, yeah, so how did this idea come to you? You are the writer, right? Yes, you're the sole writer on this.
I wrote it. I produced it with Dan Mervish, who also directed, and then Dan and I share story credit. So the way it kind of came to me was through Dan. Dan had the log line. He basically called me and said, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler. Transcriber at the White House gets a copy of the 18.5-minute gap that no one knows exists. She wants to leak it to the press. They end up waylaid at a seaside motel, and a bunch of nefarious characters kind of descend on the motel, and then we get a series of twists with a very long dinner scene in the middle. So in thinking about it, we were kind of going 3 days of The Condor meets Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and that I was not alive for Watergate, so I spent a summer reading books and watching movies and brushing up on how movies from the 70s felt. Something that I love about them is a lot of the scenes, they're nice long scenes, character-driven scenes that build to like movie lines. They're not super realist most of the time. You can like really do scenes and build a narrative and kind of enjoy the world that you're in. So the motel that we shot at is so much a character in this movie. One of the producers, Terry Keefe, his family owns the motel. It's on Greenport, Long Island. I'm from Long Island, so it made me happy to shoot here. And we decided to put as many different kinds of people from all the different walks of life in 1974 with various political and social opinions in this place and watch them interact, see what happens. So writing this was a lot of fun because there are a lot of scenes that didn't make it into the movie that, well, if one character says this one thing, it'll set this one off on a whole nother trail, and then you can only go so far in this motel. So it became like a really fun process of I guess seeing which errors were the funniest.
Did you shoot all that extra stuff and then cut it out later, or
No.
It was cut out.
This was a low budget movie, so we were in and out in 15 days. We did take a 6-month pause in the middle because of COVID. So we shot 11 of our 15 days in March of 2020. We were out in the middle of nowhere, basically on Long Island. And every time someone would say cut, it would be like, they just canceled the NBA season. And we were like, what? It felt so removed from where we were. We actually had a rep from the DGA visit us the day before we shut down. And she said, you guys are one of the last movies shooting, if not the last movie shooting in North America. And you're basically quarantined out here at this motel. We were like, wow. It all felt like too much the next day. And we shut it down.
You could have just probably would have been better if you just stayed there.
Well, 7 of our crew members stayed there for 6 months.
After
7 of them stayed there for 4 months. One of them stayed till we went back in September and shot. So producing this was basically like producing 2 movies because we had to get out there, get back, then get out there and get back again. And the second time with the fun COVID element. Thankfully, everything was safe. We got the movie. We did it in the 15 days we scheduled, and that was that. But it's been almost 5 years since I got that phone call from Dan saying, "Do you want to write this? And we can work on it together." So it's been a real treat. We've been at festivals all over the place, and including yours, which and a very nice program you put together, and we feel good about it so far.
Cool. Yeah. I don't know in the timeline. I think the last 18 months just it doesn't count. Like you can
Yes,
say 3.5. We're just gonna pretend that whole year just doesn't exist.
3.5 feels good. I can work with 3.5. Better than 18 and a half.
Well,
Let's say.
it is independent film. Like that's not,
Oh yeah.
any
No,
out of the norm.
it was truly independent, and we had put together an amazing cast.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Can you talk about that? How did you put the I mean, most people just have the answer that it's the script was so great, and it's easy for you to say that since you're the writer of it. But
I'm
any
not gonna.
other any other things besides that led to you getting such a great cast?
Was a couple things. We had a great casting director, Bess Pfeiffer in New York. We had Dan, who's directed. I think this is his fifth film, and he's worked with some nice talent before in good movies. And the actors. I started in acting school myself. I did 10 years of acting school growing up.
Wow.
So I write. I try to write for character. It's all character for me. Character comes first. I try to write roles I would want to play or do, roles that I think actors could dig into and take apart. And when we would talk with actors who were interested, as we would make an offer XYZ, we get to that point. They said it feels like there's a lot to play with here. Was something I heard a lot. Which made me happy because that was the goal. And then, I mean, now when I watch the movie and I see Willa, Vondi, Kathy Curtin, and John Magaro sitting around this table doing these scenes is like a treat. I mean, you get actors who elevate the script. If the script was good before, it is better now as it is in the movie. Thanks to them. So they made me look good for sure.
Yeah, and some people I had mentioned this on someone else's page recently for another film. I said, I just every time I see Richard Kind, I have to smile.
Oh my God, Richard Kind. We
He's
didn't
totally
I
the best.
didn't write any of the roles for actors particularly, but Dan worked with Richard on his last film, Bernard and Huey, and we were doing this writing this part. I said it was just happening that we were almost writing it for Richard. So the fact that it worked out and we were able to get him, I mean, he is definitely a crowd favorite. He's a legend. It's so fun. Like I'm watching Curb Your Enthusiasm now, and he's popping up, and I'm like, oh, there he is. It's such a treat. I'm like, it's like special for me that he's in the movie. All of them, though. I mean, Bruce Campbell is Nixon, John Cryer is Haldeman, Ted Raimi is Haig. We did over COVID Zooms with them, so that they were reading off each other on Zoom. They were recording into their own phones, and then they would just send us the phone file. And Dan edited that. Dan edited the movie. He edited it and in sound post, obviously they futzed it. But COVID, if it weren't for the fact that we had to do everything remotely, we might have had to raise more money to fly everybody to one place, get them in a studio. This allowed us, and everyone was comfortable. It was safe, obviously, and it was fun. We could do we were in and out with those guys in an hour and a half or something. So it was, that was a treat too. Yeah.
I felt a little bit of a connection to my all-time favorite filmmakers, the Coen brothers, with Richard, and then you've got that whole Raimi Campbell kind of thing going on as well. And
That's a
yeah, the whole
compliment, certainly.
crime comedy, is right up there, and I love that just in general as well.
One
All
of
right,
Dan, oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, one of Dan's personal in life mentors was Robert Altman, and he learned a lot from Altman in terms of how to shoot. You get every actor on their own track, their own lap. You get the boom, but that allows people to actually talk over each other. You can do these big scenes with a lot of people. So once you have the freedom to do that, and as I was saying, the whole idea of this was to fit people into this place, people that were as different as possible. You could do these wide shots and watch all these actors kind of like go at it freely, and it was exciting and freed
That
us
thing,
up, obviously, creatively. Yeah.
yeah, that section with Vondi and the them, and it really puts that. It has a chaotic feel, which must be hard to direct sometimes.
Yeah, I think Dan did a great job, but
Definitely.
we were after the chaos, so that was good.
All right, well, I'm going to bring in Dan. Dan works at the festival, one of the few people that help out at the festival, and he saw it in the in-person version of the festival, and
Okay.
he is a Watergate enthusiast, and so I wanted to bring him
Hello.
in. I saw him in some conversations during the actual festival, and I
It's
said,
glitching on me. Okay. Hopefully you guys can see me. I don't know.
I only see a black screen so far, but my internet connection is not
Can't
great.
see you, but I can hear you. Hi, Dan.
Oh, here we go.
I can see you fine. I can see you fine if you're in a closet with no light. You're coming through perfectly if that's where you are.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
But you can't see me. Huh?
Yeah, it's actually kind of strange because I can see you down in my other section, but
Yeah. Okay. I can see me, if that makes sense, and I can see the two of you.
we
so
can pretend it's radio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
A lot of
exactly.
radio in the movie, so
Yeah, I was told
You're a caller.
Yeah, a long-time listener, first-time caller here, Daniel. Yeah, I know that's really weird. Let me take a quick look at the camera here and see if I don't know. Not a clue. Anyway, but I can see the two of you just fine, so that's the important thing. But yeah, really enjoyed the film very much. It's definitely one of the ones we were excited about, watching. Oh yeah, it was great, and it was just me and my gal Heidi, and we're both very much Watergate. Well, we're interested in history in general, I would say, especially like the last I don't know, 150 to 200 years and that sort of thing. So for us, Watergate obviously is a huge, it's kind of a huge turning point in American history, and so we probably caught a lot of little jokes and things you guys threw in that were things you guys probably wrote and thought, we'll see if anybody catches it. But I definitely did. I very much enjoyed it. Yeah, it was great. And and it was funny, you were just talking about Altman, and I definitely saw a huge Altman element to it, which I loved. I mean, there's a couple scenes where I kept kind of elbowing Heidi and being like, hey, this is super Altman-like, like the scene on the beach where it's that one shot. It's a very slow, I think it's a zoom in, and you've got they're burning the Wonder Bread, right?
Oh, yeah. We're tracking the our main couple as they're walking over, and
right.
Amazing Sullivan Jones is giving us his manifesto, basically.
Yes, exactly, and it was absolutely perfect because, like you said, it was very much like, I don't know if you had like lavaliers on each person, but it felt very much like one of those Altman films like The Long Goodbye or Nashville, where you're watching several conversations and several, like you said, the actors are on several, they've each got their own train of thought, right? And they're each trying to get something done, and the other person is here, and there's all these sort of, it was very, very well done, and just the slow zoom of it too it just felt like so period appropriate, which I very much like.
We were trying, Dan and our cinematographer El Schneider did an amazing job.
Did I glitch on you guys again? Shoot.
Oh, I
think I might have. Oh, here we go. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Anyway, but yeah.
I can see you now, kind of.
Oh, can you? Okay, great. Yeah, it's weird. But yeah, so we very much like that. And there is definitely that, patina of paranoid films, like you said, 3 Days of the Condor, and I was thinking Parallax View, that sort of
was a big one, yeah.
Yeah, that very California, paranoid vibe,
When they were developing the look of the movie, they were saying they wanted it to feel like the 70s in the sense that the equipment that we used was, except for the camera itself, because we didn't have the money to shoot on film, but the equipment was all the things that were available in the 70s. So it was that kind of like, we love the look and the feel of imperfect, like not a perfectly smooth dolly. Like, let's feel it. Like, it gives it more of a visceral element. It's appropriate to the period. They used vintage lenses on the Varicam we were using. So
Oh,
um,
wow.
L. Schneider did an amazing job.
Wow. I, I didn't realize that you were using vintage lenses, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, I watch a lot of movies, and I would say one of the only films I can really think of in the last few years that captured that same kind of, you know, 70s vibe that you capture in this is maybe Munich, Spielberg's Munich, where you feel like it's very much a film that's being shot at the time. It's not just a period piece. It's sort of like when you look at the Last Picture Show or something,
Mhm.
where Bogdanovich is clearly filming in the style of that period.
Yeah,
You've got these obligatory close-up shots of various things that you just wouldn't see nowadays.
right.
I
One
felt
of my
that
favorite
very much.
movies.
What's that?
It's one of my favorite movies.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like you guys really kind of just nailed that. So it makes sense you guys were using the kind of equipment you were using.
Well, thank you. Yeah, they and our costume designer Sarah Kogan and our production designer Monica Dabrowski. I mean, there was a lot of research and a lot of like handmade creativity went into all these elements on the kind of budget we had. That's what was that's what had to happen if we were going to get close to feeling like this thing came out of the 70s, as you were saying, not just about it, but from it. And they all did, I mean, such a great job.
Oh, it is wonderful. And you have some really spectacular long shots, long held
Mm.
shots, I would say. I mean, one I keep thinking of is the one where they're sort of in a, I guess they're sort of in a breezeway in the hotel, and they're arguing about something, and she's talking about her husband who had died, and
Mm.
it's just that slow zoom in, and at the end of the zoom, they suddenly realize something like, oh, wait a minute, that other couple has a recording, they probably play music, or something like that. I think that was what
Yeah,
it's been a few weeks since I've seen it,
yeah, they hear
but I really
hear the
liked,
bossa nova drifting through the place. It
yeah.
reminds them that they have this lead now. Yeah.
Right, and it's kind of like they're arguing, and then all of a sudden they have that light bulb on the top of the head moment.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, then again, there's also several really important long shots at the end during the climax. I mean, you've got first one is the one outside the windows, which is just so unsettling, and yet it's also a very sexy part too, because they're basically like getting together, and the tape is playing.
Yeah.
And he's got the shirt, the spill on the shirt and everything. And I love how the characters are intelligent enough that they can be kind of dealing with this and dealing with coffee and all these other things, and they're also listening the whole time and going, oh, well, that's interesting, now that's a new wrinkle, I didn't know about that, or whatever. So I really enjoyed that shot.
I'm
And
glad.
then
I
it's
don't think
so
in movies we see enough of people listening to things. It's a lot of rapid fire, and there's a ton of dialogue in this movie, obviously, but coming out of there's a long dinner scene in the middle.
mhm.
It's all dialogue, and hopefully it gives you one kind of feeling, and then you go into this place where, and in that scene, kind of the audience has to listen. There's so much to hear that you have to kind of listen. So we didn't want to overload people with stuff while the tape was playing. Dan had this idea that when the tape is playing, we're in an uncut shot. The shot will remain, and as soon as you pause, we can cut around. But whenever you're playing it, the shot is steady. So with that in mind, we just said it would be fun to watch. We want to listen to the. You were waiting to hear the tape. They have never heard the tape. Why don't we listen to it with them in real time? And in life, when it's a great thing that you mentioned, because characters in movies are, if you're trying to make them feel like real people, you can make coffee and listen to something. We do it all the time. Everyone does a million things while they do everything else. So it was just like, what would it feel like to actually watch these people in this room like a diorama, And I'm glad it sounds like it worked for you.
Oh yeah, very much. But yeah, it does feel like a diorama now that you mention it, because we are seeing them one one removed, one place removed, because we're seeing them through the windows, and
Yeah.
like I said, of course, that adds to the paranoid element too. But it also, but like you said, that is interesting. Well, and of course, the added irony, I hate to use what's become, unfortunately, a word that almost means nothing now, thanks to Facebook, but it has a meta aspect to it.
Yeah.
Because it's a recording of a recording.
Right.
Which I thought in itself was, I kept chuckling about throughout, was the idea that they were listening to back. So here we have a woman who has, basically perfect recall,
Hmm.
and so she's a recording. She's telling him at the beginning. So she's a recording of the recording of the recording.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very funny, and just an intriguing. I thought that was a very intriguing choice. Like I said, it felt very meta fictional in that regard.
And Laura
Or
absolutely nails it. And if you want to just, I know you've seen the movie, but if someone's watching this and you haven't seen it yet, at the end, the scene that we're talking about where they're listening to the tape, if you want to be convinced that these people are unbelievable actors,
ooh,
we didn't have the tape recorded yet. So,
oh
and for
wow,
audio purposes, we couldn't play a temp thing in the room that they could hear.
sure.
So we all kind of went over what it was. We picked keywords from it, from the 18 and a half minute tape that it would cue their line or their reaction. And then I had a temp track that me and Dan and the script supervisor recorded the 3 parts on the tape. I was listening to it in headphones behind the TV in the room. So these actors are in this room listening to nothing, staring at a tape player that's just moving but not producing any noise. And then I'm behind the TV saying the keyword quick so we could take me out in post, obviously. And then they would react they would begin their little dialogue based on the reaction to what I was saying, as if it was coming from the tape player. And when you watch the
Wow.
movie, to me, I almost forget that this is true, because they are absolutely selling the fact that they're listening to this thing so well. And it was just
Wow.
fun over and over again. I'm in the back screaming words, and they're and they're reacting to it. It was a nifty way to do it, I think. It was
It's a brilliant solution too, because I don't know how to approach that either. But I know I would have had no idea unless you told me that just now. And even then, it still works. I mean, it works so well, and it is interesting watching them listening, because by this point, the suspense we've been waiting and waiting to hear this tape. You know,
Mhm.
And I think a more coy film would never let us listen to the tape. And I think I'm glad you guys didn't do that. I'm glad you did pay it off in the end, and we do hear it. And we do hear all that crazy stuff about Howard Hughes, which I had completely forgotten about, basically. But yeah, there's this whole Hughes element in the Watergate crap, and that whole bizarre
Hughes thing.
submarine thing. I mean, I don't know if that submarine was ever even built, but I remember hearing crazy stuff about Hughes, and by that point he was surrounding himself with uh, I think he only had Mormons working for him at this point on
Really?
because yeah, it was odd. He felt that they were the only people who were clean, quote unquote, clean enough for him, and he would get blood transfusions all the time, and he was growing his hair, and he would get these reports every time he had a meal. He would get a detailed report ahead of time that he would look over, detailing every single element that went into the food, the ingredients, the preparation. I mean, we're talking like pages.
Wow.
So he was all this money, and really there was no check on him in any way at that point.
Mm.
So in a way, I
I didn't know
mean,
that. That's
I
crazy.
forgot about the submarine thing, but yeah, I mean, and of course he was a huge Nixon guy. I mean, by
Yeah.
that point, so
Everything in the tape, as crazy as it is, there's some we made up the dialogue itself, obviously, but the content of it, everything has some kind of record or precedence, or there's a idea about it, or somebody has. So the submarine thing, when we heard about that, it just seemed like the perfect the reason why someone would go to these lengths to get the tape and destroy it. you know, it felt like the narrative thing that we needed, and it has some historical truth to it. So
Right. Well, it does. I mean, but it is I did notice that, and that was something Heidi and I noticed quite a bit, was that um, even the jokes and the obscenity, all that you would hear stuff, if not that exact thing, but things very similar, where he'd be talking to Haldeman or Haig or whatever on the tapes, and you're like, God, what a, I mean,
oh yeah,
leaving us his own political accomplishments and otherwise. I mean, just what an awful man.
yeah.
He seems like.
He's so boorish.
Yeah.
If we listen to a lot of the tapes on record, and he's so much like a movie character. Like it was so easy to write kind of the what he would be saying about all these things, because all you had to do was kind of think about the top three things you would not expect a president to say, most presidents to say, and it was one of those.
Wow.
And it was fun for us because we got to just dig into the character of him and all that, and how the other two characters have to like make themselves smaller to accommodate for his enormous ego and everything. But
Right.
yeah. So, and then you get amazing actors to like pull it off. And when Bruce was gonna do Nixon, we were like, we don't want a Nixon impression. We want a performance like Bruce he's doing Nixon, like he did Reagan on Fargo. So
Right.
we were incredibly fortunate to have him in the film as well.
Oh yeah. Well, all three of the voice actors were fantastic, and I didn't know who they were until the end. Although I think Heidi at one point was like, I did wonder if that was John Cryer at one point. So
Yeah.
she did get that. I didn't, but yeah. You're right. I mean,
to it. And you hear them for a long time. I mean, in terms of screen time, they're pretty heavy supporting characters. So
absolutely.
they had like they brought a lot of nuance to it. Yeah, it's easy listening. It's easy to listen to them do this. For me, when I watch the movie, I'm interested. They keep you, which is incredibly difficult to do with just your voice. So he's all three of them. It was a treat.
Dan, I need to know, because I love this sort of thing. What are the?
Sorry, could you say that last part again, Daniel? You cut out on me for a second there.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just saying that to hear when I watch the movie, I find it easy, even though I've seen it a million times now. I'm interested in what they're saying on the tape. Like the performances are pretty nuanced, and it's difficult to do with just your voice to keep you intrigued. I mean, the characters are listening, we're listening, like they're the star of the show for a good chunk of the movie. So we were just very fortunate to have these three guys.
Oh yeah, it was great, and as Nat mentioned earlier, the Campbell and Ted Raimi element.
Yeah,
it does have a Coen. I mean, my favorite living directors are the Coen brothers, and so yeah, there was definitely, I felt a little bit of that, burn after reading vibe. Although in this case, like you said, I think what you said about Virginia Woolf meets Condor is actually a pretty apt, pretty good summarization description, or like that's a good elevator pitch, I would say, for it.
We used it. Boy, did we use that as our part of our pitch, that's for sure.
Found that around the time you're just so sick of saying the same thing over and over again, that's about the time that it's finally just starting to penetrate the consciousness of the people you've been telling.
Exactly. And but as you say it, I think that was Dan. I think Dan definitely came up with that 3 Days Meets Virginia Woolf, which was a nice thing for me. As I was saying, like I truly knew very little about Watergate before I started writing it. Led to a lot of research, but that was a framework for me to say it's these.
Sure.
Cinematically, we're looking at this. Tonally, we're looking at this. You can do some tonal mismatching and jump around and hopefully make it feel coherent. And I love the research element. I mean, it was exciting to learn about and write about.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a great quote from Toni Morrison where she talked about research, because I'm the same way. 'Cause, you know, I want to just keep researching and researching. And she says, you know, it gets to be so addictive that there's a point where you're like, you know, you've spent a couple years researching for, in her case, a novel, and she's like, okay, I have to finally stop now because I could just keep researching this for the rest of my life and be
Right.
perfectly happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
which was another little bit of freedom that we had, was that this is a historical fiction movie. So the hope was that it feels like this thing could have happened in the world as it was. If you build the world and know the rules of the world of 1974 and these people, that these folks that we created and the story that we created could have happened in the world. And then that kind of, you know, you relinquish a little bit of a quote unquote responsibility you have to accuracy when your story is fiction. But, you know, hopefully do justice to what it felt like to be alive at that time and in these circles.
Sorry, I missed a little of that at the end. You said you relinquish a bit of because you're working on a historical fictional piece. What was that, Daniel? I'm sorry.
Just that you relinquish a little bit of the need to be accurate in terms of your story because it's fiction, but that if the world feels real, then the people feel real. That it feels like this thing could have happened at that time, and it does justice to how it felt to be alive at that time and the people who were alive at that time. They say, yeah, this feels. I remember what it was. I remember what it was like to be in America around then, and how ever it was all these different kinds of people, and I just like the idea of it's like a little bit like time traveling for me because I wasn't alive then. Being on set, you're walking around, and you're hearing it, and you're like, it's just there was a weird energy. It feels like.
Yeah, that's what Heidi said. Is she said it did have a certain amount of that, you know.
By the way, I'm Heidi, and I am here. I just
Hi, Heidi.
have sinus infection, so I'm kind of off screen a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm probably the only person on this call who remembers Nixon resigning. I was 6 years old when that happened. So yeah, this actually reminded me a lot of my childhood. You know, that whole 70s feel. I was looking up some of my cousins' clothes from the time because they were teenagers and things like that.
Wow.
And yes, so my degrees are in history and political science.
Mm-hmm.
And we did have to study the Nixon presidency. And yeah, the tapes do sound like they could have happened. I love that.
That's a high compliment. Thank you very much. And we, yeah, that makes me very happy. It was fun. And Dan was, I think he was about, I forget how old he was when Nixon resigned, but he remembers it as well. And
Wow.
So he would guide the craft departments kind of in terms of what we were all. And
Sure.
he just did a nice job. But like you were saying, there was a ton of detail in every department that everyone just really brought it. And we got these tape players on, eBay, and these things were functioning tape players from the period that that work. And we just had a million little of the tapes and boxes running around and around. Not to spoil it, but a couple of tapes get ruined there at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty ingenious way. Well, I don't know how much I should say, but the oh boy, I'm trying to find euphemisms here. The way she uses the tape near the end of the film,
Yes,
was, I thought, very clever, and obviously it has some metaphorical aspects too, which were very good. And again, that was another great long shot. I mean, that shot goes on and on. I mean, it's incredible the amount of places the camera seems to be going, photographing at the same time. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Such an amazing shot. I don't even know how long it was, but I assume it was several minutes, I would guess, right?
there's a couple shots in there that are minutes long. I'm
Yeah.
glad Dan's style. I love long shots. Dan loves long shots, and we had a great camera team. Like on the dinner scene, for instance, we would set up like a semicircle dolly track and you just kind of slide around it super slow. And in that movement, you kind of get the cut. We spent 2 days doing that scene. You can get a lot of coverage in one shot. I think that the rule and the edit that we kept talking about was don't cut unless you have to. Like, what is is there something motivating the cut? If there is, then you should cut. But if there isn't, then let's just exist with these people. To get to the feeling of what it felt like, the best way to do that, in my opinion, in any movie, is when you aren't allowed to leave the shot. If you are stuck with these people, you're forced to kind of reckon with who they are and what they're saying and what they're doing, like it or not. Like Michael Haneke, Amor, and all these films. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. He's like a master of this. Paul Thomas Anderson, obviously, is a master of the long shot, and Steve McQueen. I mean, so many amazing. All my favorite movies are comprised of long shots. I realized at some point. So,
I'd like to actually jump in because when we first talked about those long shots earlier, I immediately flashed to Steven Spielberg and his 70s film. There's a great video essay from Every Frame a Painting about how different, how Steven Spielberg kind of really brought the oneer, but an invisible oneer, a oneer where you're not concentrating about how, like Children of Men, where you're like, how did they do all this? How did they orchestrate this? But I will just do one like the Jaws scene when they run across the ferry is all in one take.
Mm-hmm.
It's just casual, and he points out a lot of older films before that had non-glossy. You'd have someone walk into a room and the scene develop, as opposed to just cut. They start to walk in and then they're in the whatever. Just how that was that longer feel was very 70s already. So that goes right along with what you're shooting for. Not just how you shot, but also the editing.
Dan directed and edited it, and he just did a great job. There's this movie by Maurice Pila. I think it's called The Mouth Agape. I haven't seen it in a while. There's this one of my favorite scenes of all time is these two characters sitting at a table and they're talking, and then one of them the conversation reminds them of the song, and then they put the record on in the player behind them. Then they listen to the song, and you watch them both hear it, and you can see them both remember it. Then the song ends, and then they talk about, and it's just the one we never move. It's just happening right here. And when I see this, I think about it every time I write something, because I'm thinking if they didn't have to cut and they accomplished so much from that one angle, then the cut has to be so justified, in my opinion.
Sorry, I cut out on me again for a second there, Daniel. You were saying, but that sounds like an absolutely fantastic shot. So they're remembering and then they're talking about it all in. So they think of it, they put it on, they listen to it, and then they talk about it, and it's all still one shot.
Yeah, and I might be misremembering the order. It's been a while since I've seen it, but there's discussion, and then there's the song, and they're just listening to this song, and you can just.
Wow.
I won't spoil the relationship that they have, but you watch them. They're having a scene, listening to this thing. They're totally interacting with each other, and they're listening. It's just perfect. It's perfect writing. It's perfect directing. I think about it all the time, and I recommend the movie. It's a tough one. It's a sad one, but it's really, really good. And it's fortified this thing for me that if you don't have to cut, don't. People like I don't know if people do. I like sitting with characters and existing with them in real time.
Oh yeah.
What's the name of that film?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
The English title is The Mouth Agape. Sorry, Dan. It's
I'm writing it down.
I think it's by Maurice Pila. It's a French movie. It's on the Criterion Channel. That was my big COVID experience for me.
Yeah, you and a lot of my friends, I think, actually, lot of COVID Criterion watching.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely going to check it out. Honestly, I don't believe I've even heard of it, but I mean, I'm definitely I know Maurice Pilat is, but
I've never seen a movie of his that I didn't like. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. This is the first one I saw, and then it sent me. I spent a week just watching every movie they had on there. So of his.
It's funny you mentioned Haneke and the like, and I definitely felt that, those long shots where you're in a room and it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it goes on for quite a while. And I mean, it reminded me a little bit of some of I don't know if you're familiar with Harold Pinter, but he has
Mhm.
these plays, so many of which were adapted into films, and he also wrote a lot of screenplays too. But he would have this element where things would start off relatively pleasant and things are going okay, and then then there's these sort of odd things people keep saying, and then pretty soon, about halfway through, you're like, am I getting something? I'm getting a weird vibe from this person.
Yeah.
And I think it was he didn't come up with the phrase, but it's often the phrase used to describe his stuff as the comedy of menace. And
I
I
love
definitely
that.
isn't that a great phrase?
Yeah.
I definitely got that vibe from the dinner scene. Well, actually, several scenes in the movie, but the dinner scene especially, because the question is like, well, how much is the wife in the bag? Is she really as drunk as
Mhm.
you know uh as she as we think she is? Or because it feels like at times her and it feels like at times her and Bonnie Curtis Hall are dropping these subtle comments, these little things,
Mhm.
and it's like, well, how much do they know, or are they just swingers, or like I said, is she just really in the bag tonight, and that's okay because their anniversary or whatever. But so there is this creeping sensation, like they seem to know an awful lot, and they keep kind of dropping little comments, and in fact, I actually felt that in a lot of scenes in the movie, there were certain phrases that kept popping up over and over. Like, obviously, the Wonder Bread thing kept happening. I mean, you get that right in the first scene, Wonder Bread, or whatever it was, and then that meant. I mean, and it's that happens a lot of times, and also the word peace keeps popping up. People are like, well, it's everybody has their own idea of what it is. Ronnie Curtis Hall piece is like being
Mhm.
out, and then Richard Kind, he's like, I'm trying to keep everything, everybody's in peace, or whatever he says, when
Yeah.
he's at the door, and it makes it adds to this paranoid feeling because you're like, well, okay, well, who all is in on it and who isn't, and then even at the end, I mean, I find myself wanting to see the film at least one more time. That was something Heidi and I were actually just saying a few minutes ago. We were saying, how much it'd be nice to watch it again because we're still trying to remember who who was affiliated with who. And again, I don't want to say too much, but I
Well,
mean, yeah,
we're definitely. This is something that has been fun as the film is being seen. Is that Dan and I were very much aware that we don't. There aren't. I think the answers are in there, but they aren't presented like super cleanly. It's not like this is what this means. This is what that means. I think what you were saying is really kind of hits the nail on the head for me. I love, and when I'm writing, my favorite thing in the world is the plants and the payoffs, and things that you don't think mean much at the beginning come around
sure.
to mean a whole lot later on. And to hear the same words, and it's just it starts to, like you say, hopefully create this a feeling more than anything. Where was I? What was I saying? Oh, so the actual machinations of the plot and what this means and what that means, and if the idea of this movie is that you were always in Connie's head, that this was like a total POV, like what she knows when she knows it.
Right.
You don't know, you're not like get any special information that she doesn't know. And if this happened, as it's basically a real-time movie, so she's getting information at a certain clip, she has experiencing things at a certain clip, and then at the end of it, I think it would take her some time after the proverbial credits roll to figure out what had just happened. So to be left with questions that are answered kind of retroactively, or by seeing it again or something, if so inclined, that would be super cool. I love that as a viewer to like stumble out of the theater and have to continue thinking about it. I think for me, when things are wrapped up super nicely and it's like, well, this is what everything meant and this is what everything happened and here you go. Like I just cannot help but feel it start to fade from memory almost instantly. Like the long tendrils of a movie that just like stick with you and like force you to keep thinking about it, whether
Right.
it's the feeling or the plot or the character or these repeated lines or a certain scene or like questions that hopefully aren't frustrating, questions that are stimulating. When
Right.
you want to talk about it with somebody else, that feeling is kind of the goal with the stuff I make, is to send you off and like you hopefully you're, you know, if like you're eating dinner, it just comes back into your head, the thing that you've seen today, you know.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
know what you mean. It's actually, I think I've told this to Nat too, but there's this thing. My brother and I, when we would watch a lot of movies together, and we would often have this thing. We would say a couple days later, one of us would be like, I'm still thinking about this movie,
Mhm.
and we realized after a while that when we said that, what we meant was that was a really good movie because we're still thinking about it.
That's
And
fine.
but I know what you mean. Like you'll be eating dinner, or you'll be doing something, even something very prosaic like laundry or whatever, and you'll have some scene or line of dialogue that'll kind of swim back to the surface from something, and
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy that. And I also wanted to say before I forget, because we were talking about her sort of dawning realization and how she was going to need time, even as you said, after the credits roll. But that last shot is such a bravura piece of acting on her part, where she's listening to the radio and she has to show all these different emotions and show this dawning of understanding, and how this feeling she had suddenly changes due to this new piece of information. The way she regards the other main character changes so completely, because of this thing she's hearing at the end as she's being ferried out. I thought that
Mhm.
was absolutely wonderful.
Will is it's her movie. You have to believe her. I believed her every step of the way. I mean, seeing it in person was we had 6 hours on that ferry, so we had to do the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie because it bookends on the ferry.
Right.
We had to do it all in 6 hours, and both the beginning, the first thing you see for, I think it's like a 2-minute shot, is her sitting in a car, and then the end of the movie is a 2 or 3-minute shot of her sitting in a car, and this has to instantly grab you, and then it has to pay off the emotional core of the movie basically at the end. It's incredibly difficult, and she absolutely nailed it. I agree with you. It was really fun to watch.
Yeah. I mean, it's always amazing to see somebody who's able to do all that. Like I said, and it's in one unbroken shot, like you said.
Yeah.
Um, you guys were talking earlier about Spielberg and films from 70s and such, the use of an unbroken shot, and how you had said you guys had a rule about when the tape was playing, you didn't want to cut, which I think is really interesting. It was something I didn't notice, but going back, when I see it again, I'm sure it'll be something that'll be really pronounced now for me, which is really cool. But it reminds me.
Scene to be there's a couple cuts in the fight scene.
Oh,
But
oh, really? I didn't even notice. I actually thought that was one shot. Wow.
there's
That's
a couple like Hitchcock rope style fake the cut. Well, we cut, but
true.
hopefully it's like John gets thrown into the camera and then he falls on the ground and there's like a hidden cut in there. I think there's a cut or two when Connie's getting punched. Anyway, but the hope is that it feels very fluid. So that's good that it worked for you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, very.
Or you don't notice it, like you didn't notice it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it is a lot like rope, as you say, because I mean, I didn't notice any change there. But the idea of that, it reminds me a little of the idea of having a sort of a rule, if you will, is reminds me a little of uh, Three Kings. He apparently had a thing, which again, I've seen the film a number of times, but I didn't know this until much later. But he had a rule where if there was an explosion of some kind, if there was any kind of like something like that, he didn't want to cut in the middle of it. So oftentimes when you see like like a Jeep or something explode or hit by an RPG or something, it's not like it's sort of the antithesis, if you will, of Michael Bay, where it's instead of cutting, it's like just sort of this slow, which I thought was a really intriguing idea, which does make it feel very different than an action film. You don't get the same kind of exhilaration from it. And anyway, so it made me think of that, what you guys were saying.
Derek Cianfrance, what's that film? The Place Beyond the Pines. I saw a Q&A of that back in 2013, I guess. And he was saying that because there's a certain violence to that movie, but I forget the number. He said there's only 3 bullets, like 3 bullets are fired. There's 3 gunshots in the movie, and he goes, it was like very clear to him that the impact of those bullets had to be totally felt, almost like don't cut without a reason. It was like the actual effect of this particular violence, like where the bullet lands, what it, like the reverberations of it in the time after. He was like so super focused on this, and you feel it in the movie. It's like not, it's a brutal feeling. Just yeah, but it works. I mean, it totally is. It's super effective for his goal.
It's a really interesting point, because that is a movie where there is just a couple small scenes, but and it's very interpersonal violence, at the end with Bradley Cooper, where he doesn't know if his son is alive, and so that is a huge part of the plot. I mean, the tension, I guess, at the end, where he's out in the forest, if you will. So that's interesting. I didn't know that.
These little things stick. You don't know what's going to stick when it's happening, but then here it is. Like we were just saying, it's just that Q&A I saw that all those years ago has just come back as we're talking. This is what I hope for with the movie, and this is what I value most with the movies that I watch. I watch a lot of movies. If I love a movie or hate a movie, to me those are equally as important and interesting experiences. I detest to be neutral on a movie. It's take a big swing, try something. It might not work for me. I'd much rather that experience, the strong feeling. I just this is my favorite thing as a viewer. So
the same way.
The opposite of love is ambivalence.
Yes.
Exactly. Indeed. Very, very well said. But that's true. I always say, they swung for the fences. You know what I mean? They really, so other movies that some people think are absolute disasters. I think I'm like, it's kind of a masterpiece. And I do. I feel the same way. A friend of mine and I do a podcast, and we both sort of, unbeknownst to each other years ago, realized that we didn't want to give any 0-star reviews for anything, because it seemed like even the most just the most prosaic movie, it could be anything really, but whatever it is, it feels like everything has something to offer in some way. And it seemed, when you look at like the amount of people who have worked on a film, and even if most of them were like, yeah, it's just a paycheck, whatever, there's always going to be somebody who's putting in a little extra. They're like, oh, somebody who's doing something like, and so to give a film no stars just feels wrong and insulting, because I get something from pretty much every film I've seen, even, like I said, even the very prosaic ones, or the ones that were, actually very, I felt even ambivalent about. I still got something from. So, totally. But I know. I definitely feel that, though, like you said about wanting to see something where you're getting a very visceral reaction to it.
What I found it more than once is, if I see a movie with somebody and I love the movie and this other person hates the movie, or vice versa, my pros are their cons. That we are talking about the exact same elements of the movie and it hit us totally differently, and that leads to an amazing conversation that will just go for hours after the movie's over. We're still talking about it, and now the movie has become a catalyst to talk about the other movies that we liked and didn't like when they did these things, and then like, you know, your childhood or something, like how did we get here? This, you know, anyway, it just leads to this amazing conversation that never happens if the movie for me is like a 5 out of 10 or something. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
I have so much. I want to see people like do the thing, like take the chance, take a big swing. That's my that's my favorite.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And actually, my partner on this podcast and I, we have extremely different. Usually, we agree, but once in a while, we'll differ very wildly. And like you said, it is his cons are typically my pros. Like a couple years ago with Aronofsky's Mother.
That was a good polarizing one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I might be the only person I know who liked it.
I loved it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. See, because I really looked kind of wide and far looking for reviews that seemed to really get what I was getting from it. Because people talked about, oh, well, you know, there's the biblical stuff and there's the environmental. I'm like, yeah, but I'm also seeing these other elements here. I'm seeing this director. He's almost like, he's almost flagellating himself. Like, I'm such a terrible guy. I can't keep a relationship. Look at how bad it is. And it becomes almost this operatic self, abasement or something. And for me, that was, and then of course also the technical aspects I love too. But yeah, so the things that other people typically dislike, say about that movie, I liked a lot. So
I think
you might have shit. Damn it.
Well, that's definitely kind of how I see almost everything I watch by myself for the most part, and then maybe rewatch stuff with other people. So that's one of the things I really look for, is something that makes me want to show it to somebody and get their opinion and talk about it. And that's in movies I just watch for myself, and also what I program.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what I'm looking for is just stuff, which is maybe why Dan has such a good time at the festival. So are you still here, Dan?
Oh, I am. I don't know if you can see me.
No, just a still photo.
Oh, that's all right. It's but yeah, I was gonna say that I was gonna ask Daniel, because we were talking about longer shots. I was curious. Are you somebody who really enjoys films that often take place in only one setting, one room?
Yeah.
I have a sweet tooth for that.
All of my movies so far, this is my third or fourth indie feature. This is the biggest one I've worked on. They all so far take place in one location, basically, and over the course of 1 or 2 days. There are a lot of practical benefits to this. It's not a ton of costume changes, the locations, from a producing low budget standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. But I honestly also have never made a movie like this for that reason. I just love the idea of doing of, like I was saying earlier, forcing a bunch of people into a small space. I think that character is my number one thing. It's the reason I get excited about writing anything is the character. Characters. Sure. I think character is so informed by setting, and vice versa. A person is most interesting depending on where they are to me. It's like you take X person and put them in X place, they're one kind of person. You put X person, put them in Y place, they could be a whole other person. And then if you put somebody in there with them, it changes them entirely. So that so far, when I write something, that chemistry is the thing that like gives me the juice to finish the script. I've started a ton of scripts that don't have this feeling for me, and so it always seems to come back to the reason I don't finish it is because I'm not interested in these people in whatever place I've started to put them in. And but when it clicks, and obviously it's not like I just think of something and I'm like, oh, this will be the thing I finish. Sometimes I go back a year later and I'm like, what if it's this other place?
Yeah.
The first movie was a video rental store, for instance.
Oh,
The whole thing took place in
All right, well, that piqued my interest.
yeah, it was
yeah.
it's called Rental. It was the last video rental store on Earth. What turns out to be its final day, and the whole movie is the last hour and 20 minutes of the main guy's shift that he's working there. And there's people coming in to take out movies. Or I was like 19 when we made it. There's like a lot of movie talk, you know, and it was some of the most fun I've ever had making a movie. This place in LA, Cinephile Video, gave us a key to the store, and they were like, "You can shoot here when we're closed." After we did the agreement and everything, but that was the deal. You could shoot when we're closed, and they were closed from 11 p.m. to 11 a.m.
Wow.
And so it was just me and like 6 of my friends from USC, where I studied, in this rental store, making a movie, and it just doesn't get better than that. It's like
That's fantastic.
and it was like film school. It was
Sorry,
truly the
give
most.
a second here. I think you glitched on.
Am I back?
Yeah, I'll have to hunt that out. It looks like it's on IndieFlix.
It's on Netflix, yeah.
Oh, I will definitely check it out. And what year was that you did that?
Oh boy, that was 2015.
Okay.
And then I co-wrote and co-produced a horror comedy called Killer Kate. That was 2018. And then there was this one, 2021.
So that's usually a good lead into usually what I ask last, which is what's next for the film?
Mm-hmm. So what's next for the film is, well, we've been doing our festival run. Dan Mervish currently in Gijón, Spain, where we just had our European premiere over there. It's played so far. We premiered at Woodstock. It's done St. Louis. It's done Tallgrass, which we won Tallgrass. Got a prize at Rome International in Georgia. We're doing Anchorage coming up, Whistler. We did Mostra in Sao Paulo, Brazil. That was our international premiere, and Gijón was our European premiere. We did Belize, which I've been able to go to that one. And then we're talking to distributors and all that. That's kind of we're in that last lap of the thing.
You just premiered. Your world premiere was just 2 months ago.
October 2nd or 3rd in Woodstock. Yeah, just about 2 months ago. It was
You're just
it was fun. We just started.
2 months and 10 down and 4 countries. And...
We're trying our best. It's been a long road, but thankfully it's funny to watch now. It's like on Letterboxd, starting to see like the people's reviews, and it's on the Tomatoes. So starting to see those, and it's interesting now. It's like a whole nother experience too.
That's always the best. That's always the best part is getting to see what people think of it. I just I produced a film 10 years ago, 11 when we shot it and 9 when it came out, and I just noticed that since the pandemic we've gotten maybe 15 or 20 reviews on Amazon, and I like greedily read them all. I was like, wow, more people like it. 10 years down the line.
That's great. It has a life. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I love reading reviews, good or bad. I think it's so interesting because they're not necessarily wrong if they don't like something. It's very subjective. It's just interesting. I just like it's such a unique thing. I love to read reviews. I get why people don't, but I personally love it.
Well, I should say really fast that the film Nat's talking about it's called QWERTY, and it is very good. I've seen it a couple times now. And, QWERTY, like the keyboard QW,
Oh, QWERTY.
And it's very, very well done, and it's very enjoyable. Like I said, I've watched it a couple times now, and so I should just say right now that you should check it out because it is great.
On Amazon.
But the other thing is, I don't know how you guys are, but I tend to be somebody who I've stopped looking at watching trailers almost altogether.
Yeah.
And I've stopped reading reviews other than maybe just the very beginning, like, oh, this reviewer I like says it's good. Okay, I'll definitely see it then. and then I'll go back and I'll read the reviews and watch the trailers after I see the film.
I agree.
So,
After, definitely. Like,
yeah,
I was in a movie theater and the Licorice Pizza trailer came on. I was like closing my
Covering
eyes.
your eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm going to see the movie. I don't need to see it in pieces.
that's my thought too. And I mean, the art of making a trailer in itself is I have huge respect for the artists who make trailers. So I mean, it's not that I'm like, oh, trailers, bleh, or anything like that. But it's just it's something where I find myself now in the last few years, like I said, I haven't really been watching trailers the last few years, and I'll go see a movie and I'll tell a friend, I'm like, oh man, there's this great part where blah blah blah, and they're like, yeah, that was in the trailer, and I'm like, well, I didn't know that. That was brand new for me. I was experiencing it real time. So.
If I know, I love watching trailers, like sitting there in the movies watching the trailers. But if I'm excited for the movie already, like Paul Thomas Anderson is making a movie, I'm going. Like, it's a given. I will be there.
Yeah.
And in those scenarios, it's like I would rather just see it blind. Or cold.
Yes.
Not blind. See it cold.
No, I always. I use both phrases actually. Yeah, I went in cold or I went in blind.
Yeah.
But I guess before anything else happens, I just was curious, is there because I always like to ask this of people who watch a lot of movies like you do. What have you seen recently? It doesn't have to be new, but what have you seen recently that you'd recommend? Things that have really, really kind of caught your your imagination.
I saw an anthology. I live in New York City. My family's on Long Island, so
nice.
I split the time. But in the city, there's we have a nice art house theater here in Huntington, Cinema Arts Center. They're renovating, so I've been getting all my my movies in the city, and saw an older flick called Two Lane Blacktop for the first time that I loved. I just watched Tick Tick Boom on Netflix.
Nice.
Which I love. It's like, it could be the surprise for me of the year so far. I absolutely loved it. I really loved it. That one has stuck with. I've been thinking about it a lot since I've seen it. I keep a list on my phone of what I've seen. Let me tell you. This year, I loved Annette. Like, blew me away. It was a big one for me.
I gotta finish that. I just saw the first half hour, so I've been so tied up with everything.
Such a fun one. Oh, I love The Power of the Dog.
What about the Sparks documentary? Did you see that?
I didn't. That's on. Yeah, I have to see that. I missed that.
Yeah, that's on my list for sure.
I did see the Sparks Brothers doc, and it's fantastic. They do talk a little about Annette, and it's funny because I went and saw the Sparks Brothers doc as part of a film society around here, and coming out of the theater, I overheard some people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they did the music for that Annette movie. That was terrible." And I'm like, "Oh man, I'm looking forward to seeing this movie. I'm gonna love this movie. I can tell."
And that's one of those big swing movies I was talking about. I saw it a couple times, and I was bowled over by what I was seeing. It was so it was like a shot of adrenaline just to watch it. It's great.
Well, he's like that, right? Not just the Sparks. I mean, the Sparks Brothers make music like that. The Leo, however you pronounce his name, the French dude. I mean, like Holy Motors is a swing for the fence movie. If there ever was one, you know. Yeah.
Big time. In fact, when we were talking earlier about Swinging for the Fences, that was one of the first films that popped in my mind was Holy Motors. I mean, it's like, you've got this movie that ends with cars talking to each other. I mean, that's brilliant.
Brilliant. That movie really stuck with me. That movie is one of like the top 10 movies for me that changed the kind of movies I like, probably, or introduced me to the kind of movies I like. I'm like, why have I not seen more movies like this? Then you go find them, and they're out there.
They are. It's true. They're a little harder to find, and often they don't have the same, maybe budget as Holy Motors. I mean, he had definitely, bigger. I mean, because of some of his successes in the past. But I agree, it's extraordinary. I'm glad you mentioned Annette because I've been curious about it, and I haven't seen it yet. I missed an opportunity to see it, unfortunately, but I'm definitely excited about seeing it.
Well worth it. And
Cool.
I also, in the movie, I didn't, a lot of people I know didn't see it. One of this, what they call the slow cinema movies this year. It's called
Sure.
Days, like Days, Days.
Mhm.
Stuck with me a long time. So
Huh.
if you're into those kinds of films, I'd highly recommend that one.
Yeah, sometimes I am. Well, who do you remember the director or anything?
I can't. No,
But it's from like this year. Or
this year. Yeah, I thought this year. I mean,
Cool.
play the director.
Awesome.
Oh, Psy, TSAI. It's a Psy movie.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Ming, Tsai Ming.
Yeah.
Ling.
So good, so good. This is a special movie, I think.
Wow, awesome. All right. Well, I'm excited. Yeah. I mean, anything else, or is that the main stuff you can think of right now?
Trying to think what stuck with me from this year. I saw this old blues documentary, Deep Blues.
That's yeah, I know that. It's
It's a great.
What's his name? Mudgee.
Okay.
This guy Alan Lomax wrote a book on the blues and
Oh yeah.
set me off on I love the blues and
What's it called? Deep Blues.
Deep Blues. There's a book called Deep Blues.
Yeah, Mudgee. Robert Mudgee.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know it sounded like I was like just randomly spouting out words. Put two syllables together, but yeah, no, Robert Mudgee.
And I
yeah.
The Worst Person in the World. I'm just looking at my list. The Worst Person in the World is excellent. That's a Joaquin Trier movie.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's his new one. It's really, really good. And trying to see what else I saw this year. That's a lot
Daniel,
of my favorites.
Are you on Letterboxd?
I am not.
It took. I'm a late bloomer on that myself, but again, my partner in the podcast got me on it. Probably about a year and a half ago. So it does help me keep track of what I watch. I mean, like Nat, I tend to watch movies the first time on my own because I tend to take notes, and people find it annoying when you stop the movie every couple seconds. So, but I do watch it again later. Like Nat said, I will watch it again later with other people because I'm very curious what they think. But typically, yeah, so I have kind of a diary of a record of all the movies I've seen. But Letterboxd does make it a lot easier, I have to say. I mean, I can just kind of go on there and go, oh yeah, I saw this on this day or whatever, or I rewatched this or whatever. So, yeah.
Most of my friends are very into Letterboxd. I definitely see the appeal. It seems like it's like one more step it's like I watched the movie, then I don't love the idea that now I have to go do something else. Like you have to go rate it and log it, and this I have to log in. It's like this and that. It's really more of a laziness than anything else.
I just log.
I actually kind of understand. I feel hesitant sometimes even giving any kind of rating. So I guess you can log a movie without rating it, which I guess people do. Yeah. But it is interesting in a way because I think, and again, this is something my partner on the podcast, Nick, pointed out. He's like, I really liked. He was talking about a movie called Defending Your Life by Albert Brooks that he had seen, I think, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago. It's a great movie. And he was showing me how he had seen it about 5 times in that last 6 or 7 years. And he was showing me how each time he logged it, and it's the star, it kept getting more stars. And he was kind of, yeah, and that kind of made me feel like, well, it's not so permanent. I mean, I'm putting my initial impression here, but that doesn't mean I can't change it later. I didn't feel like it was set in stone as much. So when I thought about it that way, I was like, oh, I guess I'll rate the movie, I guess, for now. But again, you can just log it too. But yeah,
I've enjoyed looking at the reviews for 18.5 on there.
Oh yeah,
it's been interesting. It's been it's fun. People, I mean, it's great. It's like it's as close as you can get to having conversation with a lot of people who have seen the movie. You just get like their impression, and you say, okay, I guess that's what you thought of it. So that was fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I know what you mean. Well, and of course, I mean, that's one of the things I really love about these Q&As is being able to talk to an artist directly. and this is kind of nice because typically when we do the Q&A, it's right after the movie. So I mean, my thoughts are very scattershot. I'm like, oh, you know, so in a way, this is nice. This gave me a few weeks to kind of collate and collect my thoughts a little bit, I guess. But
this is great. There's nothing better than talking movies. I could do this all day.
No, I agree. These are the conversations about art are the things that I wouldn't say it's the only thing I live for, but it's one of the big ones. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. So.
Good food, and movies.
Good art and good conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to show you this because I mentioned this to Dan. We talked about Letterboxd, like I think it was yesterday. I basically only rate stuff that I like. Like some people have a curve and they have this philosophy that like I should have an equal amount, right, of 1s and 5s or whatever. But I really almost always only bother to rate something, and I've logged 4,700 movies and I've rated less than 400 of them, but it is mostly 4 or 5, 4, 4.5, 5. I don't mess with that. And so I really just log it because I love the diary aspect. So I can scroll back and go, what did I watch this year?
Yeah, that's nice.
Even though for me, there's like 400 movies that aren't in Letterboxd that I watched this year. And then, what'd you say?
Oh, I hear you. I mean, there was, I was going to a lot of the films I saw at the festival, unfortunately, are not on Letterboxd yet. So I'm like, about that.
Yeah.
Inside is maybe my number 1 of the year. I love that.
Inside?
Oh, which one?
Oh, Inside. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
All right.
And then
I'm the same way as Nat when it comes to this. I typically don't try to have negative reviews, so I typically just write positive things. And I don't really understand. Yeah, as Nat was saying about this whole idea of like, somehow you have to have this equal amount of this and that. It's like, guys, you can give out 5-star reviews. It's okay. It's it's just a 5-star review. It's not your virginity. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not your one time. This isn't. Whatever, it's I mean, for God's sakes, it's not pie where you're going to only have so many pieces of 5-star review and then you're going to run out, So yeah, I tend to think that I don't really buy into that whole theory of, trying to equally or whatever. So, because typically I like most things I see anyway. I mean, I typically to greater or lesser degrees, I typically enjoy it. And even when I see a film where like I didn't really care for it that much, even in those cases, I still tend to enjoy the experience. So, do we lose Daniel?
Maybe. Oh, I totally have to go, actually.
Oh, that's all right. I should probably eat something. So.
Well, I didn't get to ask Daniel what's next for him. But.
Oh yeah, you're right. Damn. Was he trying to get back into us now, or?
No, that was actually my phone ringing. I have
no idea what
it's about either. Well, Daniel, it was great chatting with you. There he's gone now. Daniel, if you see this, it was great chatting with you. We'll be in touch and talk to you later. Thank you, Dan, for coming in and talking about stuff with us.
Oh, no problem.
Head to another Q&A right now.
Okay. Yeah, and if you do, when you talk to Daniel next, please do tell him how much I enjoyed this and everything, and give him my regards and everything. So,
all right,
yeah.
great.
All right. Well, enjoy the Q&A.
Thanks, man. All right.
No problem. Talk to you later.